Good morning. My name is Sarah Wells. Our service leader today is Reverend Lori Whittemore. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Saco and Biddeford. We also want to welcome those joining us on YouTube and encourage you to have a candle or a chalice to light when we light ours in a few minutes. I got a couple of quick announcements here. Please see the back of your order of service. It's an issue about the officers of the Board of Trustees. It's significant. Please pay attention to it. And also, I have another note. Today through Sunday, February 9th, the ushers will collect items for Seeds of Hope during the offering. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we are glad you are here with us today. The theme for the month is January is a great story. We invite you to carry that theme with you as you are here today and in your daily life after you leave. We commit to co-standards. We commit to be co-stewards of the land and to work toward a world that is just and thriving for the whole of the web of life. We invite you to take home the order of service for information, announcements, or you may leave it for recycling as you leave the sanctuary. Please silence your phones. There will be a social hour in the parish hall after the service. Please join us.
Good morning. Welcome to this place, made perfect by your presence. Welcome to the sanctuary, a place of comfort and peace and warmth and challenge. Welcome to this community where you are welcome in the fullness of yourself and the fullness of your feelings and your hopes and your dreams. Welcome to this place. We are glad that you are here. Now join me in the words for lighting our chalice. This is our sacred promise to gather together in peace, to seek truth in love, to serve human need, so that all shall grow in harmony with the divine. And stand as you're able and join me in singing hymn number 124, Be That Guide. Now's the time in the service where we turn to greet our neighbors.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are
story prayer.
Sarah.
I thought I was going to...
Joys and concerns.
Oh, that's not what I have. Okay. This is the time in our service when we invite people to share what is in their hearts, whether it is a great joy or a deep sorrow. It is not a time for announcements or political statements. If you wish, please come forward to light a candle, tell us your name if you'd like, and share your joy or sorrow with us. Please speak clearly into the mic so you can be heard through the sound system.
Hi, I'm Donna, and I'm very grateful this week that my cousin Judy had a successful surgery for her bone cancer, and my other cousin Barb is having surgery this week for an aneurysm. So I'm just praying and hoping that all goes well for her.
Hi, I'm Lori. I have a joy and a sorrow. I'll do the sorrow first. I found out Friday that a really dear friend of mine who's in her mid-50s is now in hospice care. So if you can keep Liz in your thoughts and prayers. We went to grad school together, and oh my gosh, we laughed and giggled, and I think we drove the professors nuts. So great woman. And my joy is my daughter's doing fabulous. She's living at home until her next group home is ready. And it's just, the universe is amazing. It's open the day that her abusive ex has his next court date. So she will have something amazing that she's moving towards instead of having to think about going to court. And after 6 years of very heavy vaping and smoking, yesterday she quit.
Good morning, I'm Betsy. I'm thinking of my son John out in California. He's in the northern part, but I'm also thinking of all those in southern LA County and Southern California that are experiencing the fires, sending them a lot of healing energy and prayers.
Good morning, I'm Ann. I lit a candle for my niece, Amelia, who has suffered from many problems since birth. She was the baby, you might remember, who had a shunt. And now she's, as an adult, almost 30-year-old adult, she is struggling with mental illness. But the joy, this is really joy, because she's in a group home now where she feels happy and safe, and she looks better and she sounds better. So keep Amelia in your prayers.
I just received an email this morning. There's a funeral mass for an old high school friend of mine, a very good friend, who passed away recently in Arizona. And I'd like to, I can't forget her. She's always been a good friend. If there's no one else, as I light one last candle for the joys and sorrows left unspoken, let us take a moment to hold what we have in our hearts. Heard.
Let me invite us all to take a deep breath together. We are grateful this morning to be gathered together as a community to share what's on our hearts. We carry heavy things, worries for folks who are ill, who are dying, who are in peril. And in the complication and paradox of life, we carry great joys for people who are well on a journey to wholeness and healing. Infuse us with peace and strength that we may hold each other up, and care that we might make space without fixing, that others may feel the depth of their sorrow and know they are not alone. And may it be so.
Great Story Prayer by Bob Janice Dillon. Eternal Spirit of life and love, we come together in your presence today, grateful to be a part of the great story. What a magnificent story it is! From the whirling of the stars to the evolution of humanity, from the achievement of nations to the family life around the table. There is much to astound us, disturb us, and bring us peace. We're part of a story much too large and complicated for us to fully understand. We appreciate that, but we also know that we have been given a reason to know our portion. We have within us great striving for fairness and a thirst for justice. We feel it in our bones when something is wrong, and we have lodged in our memory the dream of the right. We don't know how this story will end, though we live aware that our own individual story will end. But we know we have a chance, while we are here, to serve beauty and dignity and truth and basic kindness into this great story, into this great tapestry of natural beauty and human endeavor. We can weave in threads of good deeds. May we move this story along and jolt it every day towards love.
And now stand as you're able and join me in singing hymn number 108. feel like that prayer that was read, I mean, I think we could have read that and dropped the mic because I think it says it all, but they pay me to say things, and so here I am to say more things. Stories are threads that we weave together, the tapestry of human experience. They are our first language, our oldest teachers, and perhaps our most enduring legacy. Before we had written words, before we built temples or wrote doctrines or told stories, they were our first prayers, our first poems, our first attempts to make sense of this vast and mysterious universe. As humans, we have our cultural and religious origin stories, myths that take us back to the dawn of time. Many are interesting. Many have humans coming from earth and soil, whether animated by spirit or tears, as the Chinese would say, or other means. Epic stories that explain the unexplainable, that our ancestors were worried about or needed help with. And frankly, that we still can't clearly explain, even through science. Stories that created our context and ordered our lives and propelled us forward. And of course, we all have our own origin stories, our families, our childhood, the story of our own times. Those shaped and continue to shape the way we see and navigate the world. How we were loved as children, how we were taught, whether we grew up in the Depression and hoard empty soup cans, or if we burnt bras and have a penchant for women's rights. All a part of our own stories, whether we have smartphones or flip phones, or still have flip phones, or have no phones at all informs us of how we navigate day to day. All of these parts of our personal story point to our beauty and complexity as beautiful and wonderful people. And not to be overlooked are the fact that we all also have sacred stories, and these include our origin stories of context and culture, but also include the stories that shape our action. What makes good living? What makes living in right relationship with others and ourselves? What constitutes a good life? These stories come to us through legends and heroes, but also in the stories of ordinary people making good and righteous decisions. And in wisdom literature, they're parables or Confucian tales. And while it may be hard to imagine ourselves into an origin story, a sacred story, it's meant to stick with us and inform us and guide us, to show us a story and an application and have it make sense to us. I had a New Testament professor in seminary, and he was a German Lutheran. His parents were missionaries who lived in Africa, and when he was young, he was there. Missioning, of course, involved sharing the Gospels with the people you're amongst, and that's how he learned the Gospels, hearing those stories told in African communities. But he also absorbed the culture of the Africans that he was with, and he fell in love with African storytelling. And that's how he conveyed the New Testament to us. And the mantra and method of telling a story, where the teller starts by saying, a story, and then the audience says, let it come, let it go. So that's the title of today. And when I learned the theme, it just made sense instantly that he came to mind and made me think of where I might go with this. The New Testament are sacred stories, and we are, that's part of our origin as Unitarian Universalist. Stories are examples of people, and of course of Jesus doing life in a specific context of ancient Israel, facing pretty simple, understandable situations, even if it's not our context, and responding out of love, not societal expectations and not religious laws, but out of love and compassion. And that's my overarching understanding of the New Testament and Christianity in general. David Trobish was my professor, and he brought out the real rich sense of those stories to me. We students actually had to either be pick or be assigned a story to memorize and tell through a story, let it come, let it go. We had to make it our own. We had to understand it. We had to think about how it informed us. And just an aside, because this really blows me away, and I just have to share it here. I don't know if you know this. Obviously, the New Testament were stories that were told in Aramaic in ancient Israel. They were stories that were shared orally. And at some point when the Greeks took over, they wrote them. So they were written not in their original tongue. And in Greek, there's no punctuation. It's all a run-on sentence. And the reason that's relevant is somebody has to interpret the punctuation. And it changes the meaning of the sentence. So the sentence, God is now here, depending on the line spacing, is God is nowhere. And somebody had to interpret that story and tell it. Now, these were scribes and scholars and people who followed Jesus, so I trust, for the most part. We were taught skepticism in seminary as well, but it's just to say that other people can make sense of the same story differently, and that's important. And as you use, we make space for that. In fact, we're required to do that. So that's my aside, but I'll get back to what I was trying to say. And anyways, David Trobish taught us to digest these stories of the New Testament and make them our own story and tell them back with that method. And the story I was given or I drew upon was the story in John of the woman who was about to be stoned as a result of adultery, the adulterous woman who was walked up to the Mount of Olives by her community, and they were going to stone her for adultery. And Jesus stood out and he scribbled in the sand, and he said aloud, "Those without sin may throw the first stone." And one by one, from the young people to the old people, they dropped their stones and they left the mountain, one by one. And this may be a familiar story, and it gets extrapolated into judge not lest ye be judged, or those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. All of those kind of come from that. In addition to learning and speaking that story in my own words through this storytelling technique, I researched the culture and context of this specific parable and found that there were many possibilities for why a woman would be considered adulterous in ancient Israel. And of course, I was appalled by the fact that she would be stoned and not the person who was also adulterous or who made her adulterous. I became a radical feminist in seminary, I'll tell you. A lot of it didn't seem fair to me. A woman in occupied Israel was frequently raped, or maybe even given to Roman soldiers to preserve the safety of the family. So she might be considered unclean or adulterous and have no say in that. She may have fallen in love with somebody outside of a betrothal, a fixed arranged marriage, somebody from outside of her culture. That might make her unclean or adulterous. She could have lost a husband along the way and remarried someone outside the culture. That would make her adulterous. And I'm certain there's many ways that I can't imagine beyond these. But the story names her as the sinner, about to face her demise at the hands of her community. And Jesus stepped outside of culture and danger and law, and he stood up for her. He invited others into their own stories to think about it from their perspective and asked them not to judge her because they had all sinned too. A story about love and courage and mercy on the part of Jesus. A story about calling others to personal account. I was attracted to the story because of my interest in women's experience in that time period. At the invitation of my professors, I also made the story my own. I placed myself in the crowd that was going to stone her. What would prompt me to lash out at somebody like that, of my own culture, of my own gender? What would cause me to judge them and hurt them and kill them? Would it be fear? Would it be self-hatred? Did I feel marginalized or oppressed by others as a woman? What would cause me to turn on another human or other humans in general? And while writing this sermon and remembering that experience, I had to ask myself that all over again. Who do I judge? Who do I lash out at? Who would I stone right now? And, I have to confess that there are a few people I might like to right now. Who do I set out to harm without considering my own sins first? Weaknesses, limitations, where do I lash out from my perspective without considering someone else's story, what they've been through, what caused them to be standing in front of me? So looking at this story from a whole other angle, how am I the oppressed or attacked woman? How am I the adulterous woman? And I think of the late Jimmy Carter, who I'm sure all of you have thought of this week, and I wonder if you remember him at one point confessing, saying he had sinned, he had committed adultery by even thinking about another woman intimately outside his marriage. So that came to me while I was writing this, and I thought, where have I strayed in thought, word, or deed? Are there places, relationships, commitments where I have been unloyal, where I have even thought about being unloyal? Or am I in situations, have been in situations where I've felt ganged up on or misjudged as that woman? Who is there? Who was there to stand up for me? Where am I her in my own story? And of course, then there's the other angle, the Jesus angle, and I hate to try to be Jesus, but where have I spoken up for another? And where have I not done that? Have I dared do that when I'm at personal risk? When I'm speaking against society norms? When I didn't even know the person I was speaking up for? Do I speak up for them? Do I dare? Thinking about the Bible and Bible stories this way, thinking about life this way, really opens up enormous possibilities for deepening compassion and understanding for other human beings. It isn't just Jesus' story or the woman's story or the crowd's stories. It's ultimately our story. What do we do with it? While a story is shared with us, we use our values and our principles and knowledge to make sense of it and choose what we will do next, and what we have learned, we apply it to our lives in hopefully beautiful and transformative ways, sometimes not. It becomes more than a simple, one-dimensional black and white story that we can easily tee off against. It's a story that is complex, based on multiple people's experiences, including our own. It is no longer so black and white that we can let another interpret it for us and tell us what to believe, telling us what to think about it. And that's going to be important for us to carry with us soon. Being able to see things through other lenses is critical to our faith in particular. Learning how to see a story from another's perspective is a skill we need to develop and exercise regularly, because our faith and principles and values require us to be open and welcoming and encouraging others in their own stories, to walk with and support others even when they believe differently and act differently than we do. It requires us to try on their perspective, to understand their truth from within that truth. And we draw on multiple sources of truth anyway, right? Like in our tradition, alternative wisdom traditions and stories, and nature and culture. So without going into those other sacred texts, I have seen contemporary clever examples of this kind of storytelling. That is telling a story through different perspectives to open up the basic story. There's a kids' movie called Hoodwinked. And if you haven't seen it, I very much encourage you to see it. It's the story of Little Red Riding Hood, cleverly told as a crime story through the individual perspectives of the characters involved. The broader story is told, but it's told through the experiences of Red, as she's called, the wolf, the grandmother, a lumberjack that's cutting down a tree nearby, and a nefarious bunny. The same story told through 5 different experiences, different heroes, different bad guys, depending on who's telling their experience of the story. A widening of the lens, it becomes a way to invite us beyond black and white thinking about a bad wolf who's going to eat red. And not just from the perspective of the person who is privileged to tell the story, the winner of the story, beyond them, other people who are somehow subjected to what goes on in that story. I do highly recommend the movie, even for adults. Beautiful storytelling on an exponential level. For youth, though, what I think is great is it takes a simple childhood fairy tale and it deepens it. It makes them to start to question truth, question one story. And that's how we become informed by culture that somebody might try to limit. Also popular right now is the movie Wicked. So pardon the pun, popular is a big song in that. The story that we recognized from the old story, The Wizard of Oz, Wicked tells the backstory, including a deeper and nuanced story of the Wicked Witch and the Good Witch and the Wizard and the Emerald City and the animals. Makes the story gray, not simple, not black and white. The bad guy shifts when we hear about the bigger picture. Sometimes we don't even think there is a bad guy, for instance. The story has room for more characters that have alternative perspectives. Beautiful storytelling on an exponential level. Again, helps us question privilege and power and prejudice and perspective. Again, things I think our faith tradition calls us to do. Things our faith calls us to make space for in society. Our faith, this church, this sanctuary, calls us to make space for nuance. There are people with different perspectives. Oops, I lost it for a minute. And experiences and hearing and including those experiences and perspectives enriches our understanding and experience as humans. And you all know this. And it begs the question, do our stories here in Saco, in Maine, in the country, do those make room for other perspectives and experiences and interpretations outside of our own? Because that's the richness and tapestry of life, as that prayer said. That's the question. That's the question I think Soul Matters, which is a source that we draw our themes from. I think that's what it's pointing to and picking us out or asking us to explore. Because in circles far and near, there are those who would control a story. It would control our story. It would shape the world's story in its own image. Who will keep it monolithic and one-dimensional? Where is the space and the sanctuary and the container for more than one story? Some may want to make the morality simple and exclusive, interpreted through one lens and imposed on many. As you use, we are grounded in making space, holding space for more stories than just our own. And in liberational theology speak, that is a theology we ground ourselves on, we even call to privilege the voices who are not the winners of history, not only to make space, but to privilege it and call it forth. That is our foundational belief system. And that's what we're called to do right now, because stories do more than entertain us. They teach us empathy by allowing us to live briefly in another's experience. They preserve memory and wisdom across generations. They remind us what it means to be a UU or a UUCSBer, the people who went before us, who worked so hard to create this community. Those are our stories. They preserve memory and wisdom. They help us imagine what comes next, what the new possibilities are, the alternative futures other than the ones we think about or worry about. They give us shape and meaning and joy in moving forward beyond our suffering. And when we share our stories, we share ourselves. And when we listen to other stories with open hearts and open minds, we expand our understanding of what it means to be human. And that is sacred work. That is spiritual practice. This is where we want our story to be included. Our story. We want to be the place for stories to be shared, heard, and encouraged. I'm reminded of the Jewish concept of Majid, a wandering storyteller who carries tales from community to community. And these weren't entertainers. These were keepers of cultural memory, spiritual teachers who understand sometimes the deepest truths can only be approached through narrative. As UUs, we're called to be modern-day Majids. We're called to share our stories and listen deeply to others. We're called to question the stories that perpetuate injustice, to lift up those who have been silenced. We are called to weave new stories that imagine a more just and loving world. We are called to be a part of that story. So I invite you today to consider your relationship with story, your own story, with our story. What stories do you carry here? Which ones guide your life? Which ones might you need to let go of? Which stories are waiting to be told and shared? And I say to you, let's go forward with grace and peace and love and share those stories. And may it be so. When we gather together as a community, we bring the gift of ourselves, our hearts and spirits, our time and energy, our talents and skills to support the work of this church here within our walls and out in the larger community. We also bring our gift of generosity, giving of what we have so the work here can continue. As always, half our offering is shared out into the larger community. This month we're sharing it with My Place Teen Center in Biddeford. That's a fairly new opening organization for teens at risk. If you're watching from home, donations may be made through the Give button at the top of our webpage, uusacobiddeford.com, or checks may be mailed to UUCSB, 60 School Street, Saco, Maine. I'll also share that for the next month, we're going to be collecting socks and gloves and some other things. I think it's detailed in the order of service for folks at Seeds of Hope. So I ask you to consider that as well. This morning's offering will now be received. join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. As we release this flame from our faithful service today, we allow the spark in each of us to burn on, to warm our compassion, to fire our delight, to light our paths today, tomorrow, and always. And join me in singing hymn number 290, Bring, O Past Your Honor. Please be seated. You are in the story of the world. You are in the story of the world. You are the world coming to know itself. You are woefully and wonderfully made. May you trust that all you will ever say or do belongs in the story of the world, and may you hold what you do and you say sacred so others will share it in peace.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get
Our service has now concluded. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful being with you here this morning. I'm not sure if there's coffee, but there's definitely friendly faces that will be in the parish hall afterwards. So please stop in and say hi. Please remain seated for the postlude.